call the Tuesday, June 25, 2019 regular meeting of council to order, please. 7 o'clock. Council 2.1, adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette. Any additions? None, all in favor? Carried. Item 3.1, time for public comment. Just a quick preview. Comments and questions will only be regarding an item on this agenda, and those must be put forth that are not normally dealt with by village staff. You'll address them through myself. Debates with or by individual members of council or staff are not allowed, Mrs. Dennis. During public comment period, no commitment shall be made by council in replying to a question. Matters which may require an action will be tabled to a future meeting. Really important here that bylaws and temporary use permits, etc., that have been considered at a public hearing but have not yet received final approval shall not be raised during this time. Individuals must state their name and area of residence for identification purposes, and you will have 2 minutes upon this timer. Are there any public comments tonight?
Eugene Jamin from Valemount.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have a question for, I noticed that air quality is being considered on the agenda, and whether they're able to separate out silica from smoke, where the source of the particulate is. And it's a question on my part as to identifying the source of the pollution in Valemount.
We have a delegation tonight, Mr. Jamin. We'll see what they can say to that.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further comments, public comments this evening? Hearing none, council. Motion please to receive comments. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G. Any discussion on comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Adoption of the previous minutes under item 4.1 for June 11, 2019. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, are there any errors or omissions arising from that? Hearing none, all in favor of adoption? Carried. Item 5.1, we have a couple of delegations tonight. First one is from the Valemount Co-ed Hockey, Mrs. Diane Mickelson.
Good evening,
Please come up to the podium so you'll be recorded in history.
Councillors Pearson, Blanchette, and G. My name is Diane Mickelson. I'm a resident of 1975 Hillside Mine Road. I'm here on behalf of the Valemount Co-ed hockey team. Our hockey team, co-ed team, has folded, and we have quite a bit of money left in our account, which we would like to spend on an ultimate bike repair station. It's valued at $2,500 US. This would be a donation from us to the village of Valemount. However, the village would have to would be required to assemble and set up the repair station and maintain it. Our co-ed hockey team wanted to spend our money on something that helps to promote and encourage a healthy lifestyle. Having access to a bike repair station 24 hours a day, centrally located, assists bikers of all ages to fix minor repairs. We trust that you will find a location at Centennial Park on the Bigfoot Trail route. With our town growing and more people on bikes, we think this would be a huge asset to our Centennial Park. Thank you.
Motion to receive the delegation. Councillors G and Blanchette, any questions or comments toward the delegation? Councillor Blanchette.
I would like to know what maintenance is involved.
Well, I'm not quite sure. They're being put up in all the recreation areas in the cities. Jasper has one right close to the bathroom facilities. I don't think there's much maintenance on it except to maybe paint it. If the paint chips, it's just like a 4x4 column. I don't know if you guys have the picture of it. It's just a 4x4 column. It's built with heavy duty steel and it's enameled, so I don't think there'll be much, I really don't think there'll be much maintenance to do on it. Maybe we'll have to replace a tool or something if somebody wrecks one of the cables or something like that, but I think it would all be pretty minimal.
Steel braided cables. Mm-hmm. Okay. to each tool. And some pretty beefy arms on that bad boy.
It has a pump, like it's got a hand pump on the back side, and then I think there's 8 tools all to do with bicycles. So, and it's got a rack, you put your bike up on the rack, and then if you have a tire, if you've got to put your chain together or anything like that, it's...
And the tools on a, like, are they secured somehow so that they can't wander off?
It's retractable.
Okay.
Yeah, and then everything goes back. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions of the delegation? Thank you very much. Appreciate the offer. All in favor of receipt of the delegation? Carried. Councils, what's your thoughts on just sending this back to staff for planning? Councillors Blanchette and G. Any discussion on referring this back to staff?
Just, I think this is a really great idea, and I'd like to thank the co-ed for involving us in this and putting it out there for our community.
Dependents, yeah.
Yep.
Further discussion, Councillor Pearson.
So one quick comment, as I'm also involved with the co-ed hockey. Part of our thoughts were that it could be integrated with the future BC Hydro charging station in that area, because a concrete pad would have to be poured anyway, and it could be integrated into that, and there's a cost saving.
That's a good idea. Further discussion? All in favor of referring this back to staff? Carried. Item 5.2, we have another delegation, this time from the Ministry of Environment. With us tonight is Krista Zacharias Homer, Natalie Suzuki, and Gail Roth. The floor is yours. Thank you for coming. From the Ministry of Environment.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Krista Zacharias Homer. I'm the Director of the Clean Air Team in the Environmental Standards Branch with the Ministry, and this is Natalie Suzuki. She's an air quality science specialist with my team, and we're accompanied by Gail Roth, who's with our Regional Operations Branch in the Ministry. Thank you very much for allowing us to present to you tonight on the air quality management system and what it means for the village of Valemount. I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to run you through the presentation.
Thanks, Krista, and thanks, Mayor and Councillors. Let me see if this works. It did. So in a nutshell, this evening, what I'd like to speak to you about is the air quality management system. And under the air quality management system, this is a national system, the province has a commitment to annually produce reports on air quality and the achievement of the national standards. The most recent air zone reports that were released in May of this year, based on 2015 to 2017 data, indicate that Valemount actually exceeds the national standards for fine particulate matter, or PM2.5. So in the next few minutes, what I'd just like to go over with you folks is what the air quality management system is, what are air zones, and what is air zone management. Talk about the results of the recent air zone reports, and then specifically drill down to what this means for Valemount. This slide here provides a schematic of what this National Air Quality Management System is all about. It was endorsed by the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment in 2012 and began implementation across the country in 2013. It marked a shift in the air management approach across the country, in that prior to this, the federal government was more focused on managing specific point sources, industrial point sources, and with a lot of collaboration with both industrial stakeholders as well as non-governmental organizations and the federal and provincial governments across the country, a more holistic, a more comprehensive system of air management was put together, and that's what's captured in this schematic here. So the foundation for this air quality management system is one of collaboration and accountability. The driver for action to both to improve air quality as well as to protect human health is the Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards. So these are the national benchmarks for air quality across the country. And four pollutants have been tackled so far, and these include fine particulate matter, PM2.5, ground level ozone, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide. So the mechanisms for achieving the Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards, there's 4 broad ones, and they include industrial requirements, emission requirements, collaboration on initiatives to reduce transportation emissions. The map of Canada you see there with the red arrows, that indicates coordination of activities where pollution actually crosses, whether it's provincial, territorial, or international boundaries. And then finally, the one that I'll focus more on today is air zone management, where air zones are finite geographic areas within a province like BC and are the basis for monitoring, reporting, and taking action on air quality to achieve the national standards. So what are air zones? What are the air zones in BC? This slide shows you a map of the central interior air zone. So in 2014, the province actually identified 7 broad air zones that covered the entire province. The central interior air zone includes Williams Lake, Quesnel, and Prince George up the middle, and then the Highway 16 corridor extending from just east of Terrace, I guess, to the BC-Alberta border. So includes Valemount, which is shown by the arrow on the right-hand side. So a very broad air zone. These air zones typically feature similar communities with similar air quality issues, characteristics, and trends. And in the case of the central interior air zone, it features a lot of areas where wood combustion is an issue, and also elevated levels of fine particulate matter. So, air zone management. Air zone management is basically a place-based management, and so it's a bit of a departure from your typical just regulating a single point, industrial point source, for instance, and taking a more holistic view of all the sources in a particular area. So for much of the country, this was a new concept. So the CCME, the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, actually developed an air zone management framework to help guide jurisdictions to take action and to achieve the CAKES. So the basic premise of this air zone management framework, I guess there's 2 issues here. Is one, that it's not acceptable to pollute up to your limit, to your national standards, for example. And the second one is that, as you go from, in this case, green, yellow, orange, red, so going upwards is degraded air quality, that more rigorous action should be taken. So even if you're below the standard, it's not that you shouldn't be doing anything, but certainly the highest priority would be on those areas that exceed the standard. So those would be the areas we call the red zone. These different color-coded categories, there's 4 of them, and they're all defined by nationally consistent thresholds that are used across the country. So, and then they apply for each pollutant and for each standard. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, what we focus on is the emissions that we have some control over. So there's certain sources, such as transboundary flows, and this is more of an issue, say, in southern Ontario or Quebec, or exceptional events, and this would include wildfire. So typically we would, when we evaluate what the management levels are, we would be filtering out those events which we have determined to be wildfire influenced through a weight of evidence approach. So the air zone reports that have just recently been released, they summarize essentially 3 things. Achievement of the national standards for 2 pollutants, fine particulate matter, PM2.5, and ground level ozone. They assign the color-coded air zone management levels after the wildfire influences have been removed, and they describe the activities that have already taken place to reduce emissions in some of these key areas across the province. So the latest reports are based on the 2015 to 17 data, and I'm sorry, we had intended to bring hard copies for you tonight, and we can provide you with them after this meeting, as well as there's a web link to the reports on this PDF. So PM 2.5, this is a summary of PM 2.5 levels from the report, the latest report. And why we focus on PM 2.5 or fine particulate matter, as some of you may know, these are the microscopic particles largely associated with sources like combustion, industry, et cetera, that are fine enough to penetrate deeply into our lungs. So these are like 2.5 micrometers or smaller in diameter. PM 2.5 is associated with various short-term and long-term health effects, including exacerbation of respiratory symptoms, and also increased risk of heart attack, for instance. And this is based on even BC studies that have involved communities such as Courtenay, Prince George, and Kamloops. So there's actually information in BC that associates PM 2.5 with, for instance, increased risk of heart attacks. PM 2.5 is also, these fine particles are also really efficient at scattering light. And so they contribute to the degradation of visibility, so your atmosphere, your visual air quality, so it makes your scenic vistas less distinct, more hazy, for example. So there's a number of reasons why PM 2.5 is an issue, not only in the central interior air zone, but really it's across the province. It's a big issue. So this slide, taken from the most recent air zone report, summarizes two things. On the top, it's the near extreme daily concentrations of PM 2.5 in the form of the national standard. So the national standard is the red dotted dashed line, that vertical line that you see more on the left-hand side. And the bottom plot shows the annual average concentrations for the central interior air zone monitoring sites with sufficient data to report on. And that means at least 2 of 3 complete years of data. And the top one is, I apologize, the labels are a little bit difficult to see, but basically the daily concentrations range from around, I think it's 21 micrograms per cubic meter at Burns Lake up to 96 micrograms per cubic meter in Valemount. And that's at the fire hall site. And that's compared to the national standard of 28 micrograms per cubic meter. So certainly, Valemount is some measure above that national standard. And in terms of the other national standard for PM 2.5 based on an annual average, the bottom plot and the green bars, again, concentrations range from 7 micrograms per cubic meter in Burns Lake to 15.3 micrograms per cubic meter in Valemount. And this is compared to the national standard of 10 micrograms per cubic meter. I must mention that wildfire influence, this data does include those days where there was wildfire influence. And so you'll see that, for instance, places like Quesnel and Williams Lake, once you filter out the wildfire days, they would actually drop to below the standard. The issue with Valemount is that the highest concentrations for PM 2.5 were typically observed during the winter period and not during the summer period, although there were some days that were, of course, wildfire influenced in Valemount as well. So what does this mean in terms of the color-coded management levels? This is a bit of a complicated table here, but I just want to walk you through it because I wanted to make it as transparent as possible. On the column on the left, of course, the monitoring locations, and these are all the monitoring locations, major monitoring locations in the air zone. The next column over provides the number of valid years of data available. So you see right off the bat that Prince George only had 1 year of valid data available at that particular time, and so we were unable to compare with the national standards. The next 2 columns identify what the daily concentrations were as measured, and then next over is the concentrations once the wildfire influences had been removed. So you'll see that although Quesnel and Williams Lake, for instance, had relatively high measured concentrations, once the wildfire influences were removed, they dropped down into the orange, whereas Houston, Smithers, and Valemount, and Vanderhoof actually remained above the standard, and therefore were assigned a red management level, with the immediate objective to actually achieve the standard. The next two columns over do a similar thing for the annual average concentrations. Again, Valemount, even after wildfire influences are removed, are still above the national standard. The final column is the overall management level assigned to the broader air zone. So this is preferentially based on sites, the worst sites where there's at least 3 years, where there's 3 years of data. So the central interior air zone is red because of Houston and Vanderhoof PM 2.5 levels, but individually Valemount is also in the red. So how does the ministry respond to these air zone reports? Well, there's the actions that we do provincially to help support air quality management and continuous improvement in communities throughout the province. And there's also those activities that we apply to some of the priority areas in the province, including those areas that have been assigned a red management level. So examples of the more provincial scope activities include continuing to support our air quality monitoring network, because of course that's key to the ongoing tracking of air quality and trends over the years. Supporting regulatory reviews that are underway or some have recently finished. Examples include the solid fuel burning domestic appliance reg that was, I think, finalized in 2016, which provided more stringent emission requirements, for example, for residential wood stoves. And then the open burning smoke control regulation. That regulation is hopefully will see the light of day this summer, Krista. And if so, then it will be implemented in the fall. The wood stove exchange program, this is provincial wood stove exchange program is something that the province funds to provide incentives. They're relatively, I guess, small but not insignificant incentives to encourage people to switch from their older wood stoves to more cleaner burning alternatives. And finally, supporting various BC Long activities. We support a air quality and health workshop for those health and environment professionals and others that are interested in air quality, usually held in the Vancouver area. But we also take some of those experts out into various smaller communities in the province through an air quality, BC Lang Air Quality Community Lecture Series. And I believe Valemount has already has hosted one of those events as well. In terms of some of the priority activities for priority areas, of course, begin engaging local government through events like today, because I guess our intent is to provide have no surprises here, and to be upfront about what we can do and what we can't do, and what are the opportunities that we can work together. Identify information gaps. Of course, everybody has their, I guess, theory about what's contributing to the air quality problem, but I think it always it's incumbent on us to look at the evidence and to identify what the actual sources may be. Build on existing local air management plans. In some communities like Cowichan, for instance, they'd already been going down the path towards a local air management plan, so we helped support some of their activities to push them over the line. And finally, ultimately, this is what we want to do, is identify ways to reduce emissions over time. So I would be remiss if I didn't just acknowledge some of the activities that have already taken place in Valemount, because we're not starting here from square one. There is a certain base of knowledge already gained in the Valemount area about air quality here. So as I mentioned, the 2017 BC Lung Air Quality Workshop that brought Mike Brower, Sarah Henderson, and I know my colleague Gail Roth was involved in that as well, to talk about PM 2.5 and what the why we should care about it in terms of our health. In 2018, we helped support a mobile monitoring study by Matt Wagstaff, a UBC researcher, or I guess he was a master's student at the time, to drive around Valemount and look at the spatial variations in the PM levels. So we knew that it wasn't just there weren't just high levels at the monitor, the fixed monitoring site at the firehouse site, but it was actually, there were pockets of high PM 2.5 around the community as well. So, that certainly helps inform what those sources might be. And then the 2018 Burn It Smart workshop, of course, that I believe Gail was involved in, that talked about more efficient ways to burn fuel. So what does this all mean for Valemount? There's no sugarcoating that Valemount has high PM 2.5 levels in certain times of the year, and winter being one of them, and potentially a wildfire season as another area, but particularly the winter time, PM levels are high, and the red status means that Valemount is a high priority for the ministry as well, because we have an overall responsibility for air zone management in this province, and it's also a high priority for specifically technical support. And I know Gail has already been active with your Air Quality Council here in Valemount, as well as in the past we have provided some strategic funding to various red communities to support various activities, whether that be studies to confirm what we should know about air quality and the emission sources contributing to poor air quality, identify any other local factors that may be affecting air quality, and determining what can be done both in the short term, what are the low-hanging fruit, and what can be done over time to reduce PM emissions. There's a lot of communities that have faced high PM levels, and a lot of action has been taken. I didn't send you a copy of this, but I can leave it actually, a hard copy of mine behind, but we have produced a summary of some of these responses to the air zone reports. So that at least provides you with, I guess, high-level information on what the approach that some of these communities took, and where to go for more information, because no sense starting from square one. You might as well build on what others have already done. Next steps, this presentation was not meant to be the be-all and end-all. It was meant to, I guess, initiate discussion on the process and the opportunities, I guess, going forward in terms of, how we can improve air quality in Valemount. So there's our contact information, Krista and mine, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Outstanding. Motion please to receive the delegation. Councillors G and Pearson. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Blanchette.
So is there a way to separate the silica from the smoke to get an idea of what we're dealing with?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few ways, both in terms of the size, the size fraction associated with the smoke versus the silica, and also the season. Because, are your silica, I don't know if your silica events are associated more with dry summertime conditions versus, the dead of winter, periods when you've got an inversion and wood smoke is building up in your community. But Gail, I don't know, do you have anything more to add to that?
Very generally, yeah. There's different ways that you can understand where sources of this or the particulate come from. Size is a really simple filter to look at initially, and we do have enough information to look at that and have a good idea about when there may be an event, say, off the reservoir versus residential with burning. And we can also look at patterns during the day as well, and wind speed, and all that type of data is already collected and available in Valemount to understand.
Councillor Pearson?
Actually, I was going to ask about the silica. Is that so? It's my understanding it's considered a PM10 silica is, or is it smaller?
It's, I mean, it could be fairly fine, I believe, but,
Yeah.
I think the really fine stuff is primarily, it's the high temperature that creates the really fine particles, right? So the combustion sources that create the really fine particles, but I don't know, Gail.
Yeah, so when you have things like dust, whether it's silica or any kind of dust, that's more a mechanical breakdown. So for the largest proportion of particles in those types of sources, they would be actually larger than PM10, anything that we would monitor. And anything that's 100 or larger falls out of the atmosphere very quickly. So say you had a dust blow off the reservoir, visually very dramatic event.
Mm-hmm.
Much of those there's a portion of that would be in the fine fraction that we measure, but much of it would actually be quite larger and not small enough to enter the respiratory system efficiently, or our human bodies can expel it quite readily through the natural defense systems we have.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then one other question, it was regarding the wood stove exchange program. I know you mentioned that it was a small but not insignificant amount, but unfortunately, the people that we need to target in getting to high efficiency wood burning are the low income people that can't afford a $3,000 high efficiency stove with the amount of the rebate. So I think that would be something that would need to be addressed in a smaller community. So
Yeah, some of the ways that other communities have actually augmented what the province provides. So it's, while the province may provide $250, for instance, a community like Smithers will, provide us significantly more money to help encourage folks to exchange their wood stoves. So, there's that, but also, I guess, our wood stove exchange program, I mean, they continue to, reevaluate with each year. So certainly, I mean, those are useful comments going forward in terms of how can we make the program more effective, I guess, for the people that really need some help to do this.
thanks.
Yeah.
Further questions? Are you aware, Ms. Suzuki, I am aware of other jurisdictions that take advantage of property assessed clean energy financing. So using property taxes in order to upgrade something on that property, in this case a wood stove. So over a 15-year period, it would be repaid through property taxes. Are you aware of any communities in BC that are using something like that?
No, I'm not. I don't know if my colleagues are, but that's certainly one I can take back to my colleague in Victoria, who's the primary, lead on the wood stove exchange program, and whether there's, he can provide some examples, and I can get back to you on that. I know some of the local credit unions, for instance, have provided better rates than normal for supporting wood stove exchange program as well.
We just got to get a credit union. And finally, of the communities that have been responsive, do those communities have access to natural gas?
That's a very good question, and I'm very aware that Valemount does not have access to natural gas, and the red communities that we have dealt with so far, Vancouver Island communities, Port Alberni, Duncan, Courtney, I mean, they would all have natural gas, as would, I believe, Smithers, Houston, and Vanderhoof. So, that's a particular challenge in terms of looking for, I guess, alternatives to wood stoves in this community.
Councillor Blanchette?
Has there been any incentives to the, like say, Home Hardware that would buy these stoves? Like, is there any kind of incentive that the municipality can work with the local place that's going to purchase the stoves? Is there any kind of partnership there that we could work on.
I think there are examples of the local, wood stove retailers supporting the program. Gail, you might have more recent information.
Don't know anything specific on my head, but yes, I would say Smithers has done something along those lines where they've had different community partners, so they really, between multiple contributors, you get quite a substantial rebate for an individual. So there's different partnerships certainly to look at and kind of going forward.
Because that's the biggest stumbling block. Like that's, it's huge.
And as I mentioned, I mean, this is a way to kickstart discussions, and I know there's already been, some discussions last week, but, it's an opportunity to get the issues on the table and identify solutions based on what we know others have done, but also, what further needs to be done for this particular community.
Because in this community, we are limited as far as partners. We don't have some of the big industrial, places that could help. So the small communities really are limited. So it's something to be aware of.
Further questions? Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And looking forward to further discussions. All in favor of receipt of the delegation? Carried. Item 7.1, BC Natural Resources Forum. Wow, they're really putting it out there early. It's next year, January 28th, 9th, and 30th, 2020, at the 17th Annual BC Natural Resources Forum. Any takers? I haven't been. It's a great, I've heard it's awesome. Any
I'd
takers?
like to nominate that you go, unless somebody else wishes to.
I have no problems with that. Councillor MacLean attended last year, I believe, so.
Yeah. Hopefully we can do this, get everybody there, or something similar. Is there a seconder on that motion? Councillor Pearson? All in favor that I attend the BC Natural Resources Forum next year? Thank you very much. Carried. 7.1, speed signs on 5th. Speed signs on 5th Avenue. Yes, okay. Recommendation here that the letter regarding speed signs on 5th Avenue be referred back to Public Works Superintendent for feedback. Councillor Pearson's and Blanchette. Any comments on the report? Or on the letter, pardon me? Yes.
I would just like to thank Ms. Lorenz for bringing this up.
Absolutely. Usually it's the other way around. All in favor of referring this back to staff? Carried. Under section 8, anybody wish to pull anything out of the reading file? Councillor Blanchette?
So Ms. Nunweiler's letter about the Tier 2 for BC Hydro, I'd like to thank her for the letter and just let her and everyone know that it is a huge concern for council, and we've discussed it and we'll be addressing it at UBCM as best we can, because we do need to have it addressed and done with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe Fortis has scrapped their Tier 2 pricing system and brought it back to the Utilities Commission. And not sure if it's been approved, but they're looking to scrap it for their customers. It'd be a nice surprise if BC Hydro did that. Thank you very much. Administrative reports, items 9.1, the building inspection report was refiled with some corrections in it. So motion please to receive the report. Councillors Pearson and G. Any comments on the report? Corrected report? All in favor of receipt? Carried. Item 9.2, Valemount Lions Club. Request to use the laneway. Recommendation here that staff be directed to draft a 5-year lease between the village and the Valemount Lions Club for the use of the lane located immediately behind 1100 Main Street, with the annual fee to be determined. I think in this case it's typically $1. Is there a mover on that one? Councillor Pearson for $1. Councillor?
Correct.
Councillor Blanchette, seconder. Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Carried. Item 9.3, the Valemount Sports Day Association is looking for some reimbursement in the amount of $400. What's council's wish? Councillors Blanchette and G. Discussion on the reimbursement? All in favor? Carried. Item 9.4, the rail crossing safety at Main Street intersections. Recommendation here that the report be received. It's council's wish, Councillors Blanchette and G. Any discussion on the report? Councillor Pearson.
Just comment that I kind of chuckled when I read that their concern was the potential for accidents due to lack of familiarity with the new traffic patterns, which I don't think would be unlike when the village changed all the stop sign arrangements without any consultation and created a bit of a nightmare with traffic, but we will let it go and see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Further discussion? All in favor of receipt? Carried. Item 9.4, we have the statement of the financial information Sophie report before us. Motion please to approve it. Councillors Pearson and G. Any comments on Sophie? All in favor?
Reading.
Pardon?
Thrilling reading.
Invigorating. All in favor of receipt, of approval, please. Carried. We have in 9.6, Valemount Sportsplex concession upgrades, request for tender. Recommendation here that we enter into an agreement with Northern Health Equipment for the provision of equipment as per the Valemount Sportsplex concession upgrades request for tenders. Councillors Blanchette and G. Discussion on the agreement. All in favor? Carried. Item 11.1, council reports. Councillor G.
All right, I get to go first again. Thursday, June 13, I attended a RENT conference, which stands for Regional Education Networking and Trade Show, put on by the BC Nonprofit Housing Association in Prince George. It was really informative. It was only a one-day thing, but there's a lot of different agencies working together to deal with, a provincial housing crisis. The next one is November 17th in Vancouver, and that is BC's Affordable Housing Conference. I would hope that maybe we could send somebody from our housing committee to that conference, because there's a lot of information. There's BC Housings there, CMHC, some of the groups that were there were the Aboriginal Housing Management Association, BC Healthy Communities. There was a really interesting company at the trade show called Metric Modular. Look them up, they're really cool. So it was a really good thing to go to. Thursday, June 20th, I attended the Committee of the Whole. Monday, June 24th, I was at the info session here with our Economic Development Officer, and also later that day I attended the CYMH collaboration meeting for youth, and the main topic that they are tackling going forward is vaping with youth. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blanchette, would you mind taking November 17th back to the Housing Committee and bring a recommendation back to council, please? Thank you.
Before I start my report,
I was going to go with Councillor Pearson,
Oh, okay.
but go
I have a
ahead.
question for him
Question for Councillor Pearson?
though. Yeah.
About his report?
Is there wheelchair accessibility to the arena?
Yes, there's an elevator
Getting into the arena. Sports days, we had a wheelchair patron that could not get into the building to go up to the quilt show. They couldn't get in the front door. Is there another access that?
As far as I'm concerned, it's wheelchair accessible. We've got the
There's a
remote
lip.
doors.
Yeah, but there's a lip to try and get in.
Was it just the two doors that were open on the Sportsplex side? Was the main door open that day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the main door was
They
open.
couldn't get onto the ramp to get into the door. So I remember to write it down if if you could
Okay,
check.
I would have to look at it again, but,
Okay.
because I know all accessibility hardware is there as far as the automatic doors and
Yeah, and that
such.
part was fine, but it was getting to the door that was the hard part. They couldn't get
The
up the
concrete
cement
ramp.
ramp. Yeah, they couldn't get onto the cement ramp.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll talk to them.
sorry and thank you.
Oh, no problem. Would you like to continue with your report, Councillor?
So on the 17th, I went to the Fire and Rescue Community Consultation Committee, and we are getting a brand-new fire truck. It's going to be custom designed for our needs, and kudos to all of our fire staff because it's their baby and they're paying for it and they're really excited. They have the community in mind when they're putting all this together and saying this is what we need and why, and so this is really fantastic. On the 20th, I attended the Clean Air Committee meeting with Gail Roth from the Ministry of Environment, and it was fantastic. So thank you very much for coming. It was a real, yes, we realize that this is the problems, and it's setting up next steps, and this is a working task force. So we are on the case, and everybody walked away with their list of to-dos. So hopefully we'll have some more information following soon. Again on the 20th was the housing meeting, and again on the 20th was the committee of the whole meeting, and again on the 20th was 2 separate in-camera committee meetings. On the 24th, I had a Robson Valley Community Service meeting, and then we had the council info session with our EDO, which was very good. We had the child and youth mental health, and I didn't realize that vaping was such a thing. I don't really know a lot about it because my child is 34, but it's scary. And then I attended another in-camera committee meeting again. And then the 25th was elder care, and we're still in the process of putting our fall fair together. So if anybody has any ideas, anything they'd like to see, just have them contact me. We want to make it a really great event that services all of our seniors and their caregivers and anyone who is going to be getting older. And then we have council tonight.
Do you have a roundabout date in September for that
It
fall fair?
is October 5th, I believe.
Oh, it's in October.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson?
I feel like I had a rather light couple weeks now. June 18th, I had a telecall with Operation Lifesaver. Some good discussion. I thank them for sending somebody up for the Valemount days to work the tent with me. And a reminder that Rail Safety Week will be September 23rd to 29th, so there'll be some social media posting and such about that. The 20th, Committee of the Whole with the rest of council, our CAO and corporate officer. 24th, Public Engagement Session with EDO, Mr. James Lamberti and council. And then earlier today I had the Valemount Historic Society. So that was my 2 weeks. You had more in one day than I had in a week. 2 weeks.
Okay, goes and flows.
Oh, the 13th, they took part in the Columbia Operations teleconference, BC Hydro, where I was able to learn that the monetary value of the non-treaty storage agreement of Kenbasket Reservoir is $23 million annually. Just for us to hold back water, more water than what's required by the treaty. So that was a really neat number to hear. Something we can take when we have our own negotiations. Later that day, participated and attended the mountain bike park celebration. It was both a celebration of what the Varda has done with the mountain bike park, but it was also a consultation, kind of a community consultation of what they were kind of thinking next, and they were looking for feedback. Seems the current trend is more and more cross-country right now, and it's one of the features that the mountain bike park is currently could do better. So getting a bit more land base and going more horizontal rather than straight down. Attended 17, 18, or sorry, the 18th, 19th, and 20th. I was in Prince George for the Regional District Strategic Planning. Just an awesome couple of days with the consultant, Sheri, former CAO of Nanaimo. Really starting to put our next kind of 5 years together over there in Prince George, or the whole regional district for that matter. And then on the 20th, took part in regional district board meetings and subcommittee meetings. Committee of the Whole, dash back here that same day on the 20th for 7 o'clock, Committee of the Whole. And another council orientation. Thank you to staff for setting that up, attending with you all yesterday around community engagement. And then I'm here before you now. Motion please to receive council reports, Councillors G and Pearson. Any questions of other councillors and their members of council and their reporting? All in favor of receipt? Carried. Nothing to go into camera for, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Pearson.